paper, but on page 7, the second paragraph on the bottom, where John Carroll goes on record in an interview directly contradicting what he stated to in his email to Elizabeth. Carroll said it still could be a few years until Maine Revenue Service, CMP, and the towns agree upon exactly how the tax benefit, which we're just talking about, of the NEC would be distributed. My obvious question, and one the PUC should be asking, is why is Mr. Carroll making assertions of future revenue to towns and then going on the record stating it will be years before we know how any future tax benefits will be distributed? Shouldn't the PUC be wondering if CMP can make false assertions at worst, or be so far off in estimates to towns, whether their reported estimates to the PUC are accurate and truthful? What's reported to you is value versus what's reported to towns. I think that would be a good project for somebody to go to Maine Revenue and say, what's being reported to the towns versus what's being reported to you for value. Whether towns' estimates of PUC are accurate or truthful. The permitting process, whether before towns, counties, the state, or federal entities, requires accurate, honest estimates. And reporting is, and as shown above, is not the case with CMP, and should not put any of should put any of their permits before the PUC or any other board under extreme scrutiny. They came into the town of Dixmont. They went into my other towns, promising some numbers, and they never have come through. We actually have classes now where we talk about what we're going to do, what we have to do to try to figure out how to value CMP, how to get property tax, how to get these corridors properly valued, because most towns just accept the number that they present. Finally, Maine is a net producer and exporter of energy, and this project, it says whether it's necessary. Is not necessary by any means. It probably is convenient for Canadian power exporters and CMP who hope to benefit financially at the possible, if not probable, detriment to Maine ratepayers, especially ratepayers in this beautiful part of Maine. Nowhere have I seen any economic impact studies of what will happen to this region, already hard hit by loss of most forest industry jobs, leaving this area with ratepayers and business heavily dependent on tourism. Should this project come to fruition, it is fair. Should this project come to fruition, is it fair to risk an entire region's economic stability for unknown future benefits, if any, which could end up being shouldered by Maine ratepayers for power being shuttled through our state from Canada and benefiting Massachusetts only? Please take a stance putting Maine ratepayers and taxpayers first and deny this application. So, I'm a little passionate, but I grew up here. I hate my town. I love my towns. I know a lot of taxpayers don't like me because I care about them and I want to make sure it's fair. So,
thank you. Your name's on there?
My name's on there, and I can supply extra towns.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, we're averaging about 10 minutes a person here, so if we keep up at this rate, we're going to be here till midnight. I want to say if you agree with somebody, you can just say you agree with them and then go on to other additional specific points. But I really do want to hear from everybody, and I do not want to say you can only speak for 3 minutes. So let's keep doing what we're doing, and I'm going to ask you to move it along, but I definitely want to hear everything you want to say. So, is there anybody that we need to move to the head of the line, or should I go back to the original list?
Back to the list. All
right, back to the list it is. We got Tony DeBlasi.
I promise this will be very short.
I'm not meaning to rush you, man. All right, cool.
It is nature. I'm just a rap guy, just telling my perspective. I see a lot of other fellow rap guys here, so thank you guys for making the trip up. We really appreciate it. My name's Tony DeBlasi. I'm a Maine resident, currently living in Windham, Maine. I own a home in Carrituck. I pay taxes, I pay rates with CMP. I've been a registered Maine guide on and off for nearly 25 years. I love this region. I've raised my family to appreciate the pure natural splendor that it offers. In my time in this area, I've taken hundreds of people from all corners of the globe down the Kennebec River. They've had the unique opportunity to share amazing wilderness river trips with people from Thailand, Chile, the UK, Japan, Australia, Russia, countless summer camps, and bachelor parties. Every single, I'm going to go off script just a little bit, every single trip I've ever taken down, I either pointed out or they pointed out to me, once you pass Turtle Island and you start getting into the non-whitewater, they all notice the wilderness. Either I bring it up or they bring it up. It's pretty amazing. That's when the river really starts to show its true beauty. If this power line project gets approval and goes forward, crossing the lower Kennebec, we will have lost a true gem. I started out as a Moxie Outdoor Adventures guide in the early 90s. I think I trained this idea, you did, Joe. Yes, sir. I still continue to guide for them to this day, and others. Our lunch site for Moxie is in plain view of the proposed river crossing. Seeing the high voltage direct current wires complete with red aviation warning balls will aesthetically cheapen the river experience and devalue the product that we have worked a quarter of a century to develop. Feels weird saying that, but it has been. Put a lot of time and effort and energy into this. Kills me. Not to mention the project would ruin an untold number of wilderness habitats, and for what? So the Commonwealth of Massachusetts can get clean energy from Canada? I, for one, do not see how this project benefits Maine taxpayers with lower energy costs or ratepayers. I'm not opposed to clean energy ideas when done in a thoughtful manner with the full support of the community and individuals and businesses it directly affects. I feel this project has been rushed through its paces after Northern Pass's abysmal defeat in New Hampshire. I could not be more against this. There is way too much at stake here, and if green-lighted, there is no rewind, no undo, no turning back. When it's gone, it's gone. That's my spiel. Thank you very much.
Next up, we have Kathy Barkley.
Less than 3 minutes. I also have a sworn testimony that someone gave me permission to do. Is that the correct method?
Sure, this works.
Thank you. I'm Kathy Barkley. I'm a resident of Caratunk. I have been in this area since 1985. And first, I would like to thank you for requiring CMP to provide maps of this project that the average person who is not a computer genius can read. Thank you so much, because it's been a struggle. I'm here to ask you to not approve the NECEC project because it does not meet Maine's public need. Maine has no energy shortage and no need for this transmission line. This DC line to benefit Massachusetts will stifle, not encourage, Maine's renewable energy generation. This project may create a temporary economic benefit to Maine during construction, but the PUC's own experts have found CMP has grossly overstated ratepayer potential savings by 57%. One economist argues NECEC would reduce property tax revenues from power generators statewide and could displace more jobs than are created. NECEC would produce negligible benefits and could even have a net negative impact. NECEC will cause massive environmental destruction with no decrease in greenhouse gases because this is not new hydro. Hydro-Quebec's current buyers will be provided dirty energy to meet their needs. Massachusetts can meet its energy needs by investing in renewable resources, conservation, using and improving existing transmission corridors, or a combination of all three. This would impact Massachusetts, the state that needs the power, not Maine. NECE's corridor, especially the 53 new miles, will have disastrous effects on the scenic and recreational value of our area. We do not boat on our waterways, fish in our streams and rivers, hunt in our woods, or hike our forests and mountains to view a 300-foot wide, herbicide-maintained scar with towers taller than the trees. IF&W has expressed their concern over the corridor's effect on flora and fauna. Trout Unlimited is greatly concerned about impact on our native trout population. No wildlife or environmentally oriented organization has expressed any positive effects of this project to Maine. The only ones who benefit from this project are CMP, not a Maine company, to the amount of $60 million a year for the foreseeable future, Hydro-Quebec, and a minority of rafting company owners who stand to benefit financially from their relationship with CMP. The people of this area and the state of Maine as a whole do not benefit. This area will experience less economic benefit from nature-based tourism and the destruction of a way of life in the largest unfragmented temperate boreal forest in the world. Please do not approve this CMP, a company that has proven they cannot be trusted to deal honestly with the public project. Any CEC does not meet the mandate of benefiting the people of Maine. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Okay, next up is Noah Hale.
I'd like to thank you guys for coming out to my hair house, because I feel like our voice is small and it's been stifled for some time. A little bit about me. I'm from Jackman, multi-generation Mainer, Somerset County Mainer, outdoorsman, river rat, and these rivers and this whole corridor, not just where it stretches to Kennebec, but all the way through Addian, Coburn, through to the border. Like Will, we've paddled it, walked it, hunted it, we know it well, and it's super special to us for obvious reasons. And a little bit about my background, I travel a lot. I've walked most of South America. I've hitchhiked from Fairbanks to Anchorage to Kenai. I've spent 8 years in Hawaii. I know what untouched environment is, and there's not much left. And this is special, and we have to do something for it. And I'm also an environmentalist to the effect that I know the planet's hurting. I know we need green energy, but this is the wrong way to go about it. For my experience in this, I'm going to cover two parts of it. One will be what I think about it business-wise, and the other environmentally. Business-wise, we know CMP can't be trusted. They've proven it. They have 2 class action lawsuits. One of them's fraud, straight up. I mean, come on. And secondly, the people that are doing other dealings with them, how can you trust them? It's all over the papers. It's all over the state. It doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't have to be cut. It just doesn't work. Environmentally, we know what's going to happen. It's going to rip this thing out permanently through a section that's going to really crush a lot of tourism business. And you can't get it back. Like they're saying, once it's gone, you can't get it back. The river crossing, yeah, that's important to me too. All of it is super important to us. I mean, in my closing argument, I don't see the benefit. CMP isn't the CMP that we knew. Avant-garde. And I know that a lot of focus goes into lobsters and lighthouses, but I come back to Maine for this northern Maine. And we need to protect it, because there's not much left in the world. That's all I have to say.
Eric Sherman.
I'm going to take up their extra time.
Okay, before you do that, time out. How are you doing?
I could use a break after this.
Okay, so again, this is being recorded, and I want to give the reporter a break because she's been going full speed. So we're going to take a quick break after this.
These are pictures from Williams Mountain that I took. The first one is one of my photographs I took from the fire tower up there, and the other one is a rendition of what the visual impact will be should that CDC go through. And here's a site copy. Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to voice our concerns here at this meeting. We appreciate that. My name is Eric J. Sherman. I was born 20 miles from here in Greenville, and I've lived in Maine for all but 54 years of my 55 years. So I moved away for a little bit, and I came back for the beauty and to get out into the wilderness. I'm currently in my 34th year as an active registered Maine whitewater guide, and I've been a registered Maine recreational guide for over 20 years. I'm also a teacher at Greenville schools. I hike, I bike, ski, snowshoe, kayak, canoe, and raft in Maine's vast wilderness. I'd like to submit the photographs, as you saw. I spend a large portion of my time, May through October, working on the Dead and the Kennebec rivers here in the Forks area. I love Maine's wilderness, and I love sharing it with the people who come to this area for rafting and camping, sightseeing, and vacationing. I have concerns for the experience of the guests who book raft trips on the Kennebec River, concerns for the other waterways and wildlife that will be affected, concerns that CMP of on-grid Iberdrola has not been forthright about this project, and concerns that existing and future renewable energy projects in Maine could be eliminated because of the NECEC. Ironically, all of my concerns are irrelevant in the light of the fact that there is no public need in Maine for the NECEC, as Maine generates more electricity than it consumes. When I bring my crew to the river, where we load the rafts at Harris Station Dam, they are awestruck at the dam. And I look at it and I go, that's an awesome view from where we put in. It's enormous and it's awe-inspiring. And I share with them the history of the dam. I talk about the natural history of the area and the specifics of how they generate hydropower at Harris Station. And believe me, the irony that a dam which drastically altered the landscape 65 plus years ago is not lost on me in the protests against the NECEC. But that's history, and I'm looking ahead to the future. Except for the stairs at Cary Brook, which were constructed for safety reasons, once we leave Harris Station Dam, people do not see a man-made structure until we hit the ball field at West Forks, where we see the Moxie Road briefly, the bridge, and some houses. The company I've worked for since 2001, Moxie Outdoor Adventures, has its lunch site just upstream of where the proposed lines will cross the river. Those lines will be visible from our lunch site and will be an eyesore that detracts from the wilderness experience of my guests, the other guides, and me. People don't leave their homes in Boston and its suburbs and in southern Maine and its developed areas to go to a place that looks like an industrial park, especially when they expect a wilderness experience. I'm also concerned for the wilderness, waterways, and wildlife that the power line will affect from the Maine-Canada border all the way to Lewiston. I read an article that summarized the following about CMP of on-grid Iberdrola's plan. CMP of on-grid Iberdrola proposed power line includes above-ground transmission lines across 263 wetlands, 115 streams, 12 inland waterfowl and wading bird habitat areas, the Kennebec River Gorge, the Appalachian Trail, Moxie Stream, and near Beatty Pond, a Class 6 remote pond. In actuality, this figure should be much larger, as they do not include the roads which will need to be built to the construction sites. And that's, to me, just unacceptable. My family owns a camp on Moosehead Lake, and we're not allowed to cut a 6-inch diameter tree near the lake for fear of an impact on the wildlife in the water. Additionally, there will be a negative impact on the deer herd in the area of the new 53.5 miles of corridor. We already know that if the power line comes to fruition, the cut will go through some deer wintering yards, and that's a definite detriment to them. However, we also need to consider the fact that having all that area opened up will dramatically increase the kill both during and outside of hunting seasons. The number of deer taken on existing power lines is very high compared to that of forest kills. It's wide open, and ATV or other vehicular access to those areas will increase the number of hunters that will go there, and the deer are sitting ducks. With this wide open space interspersed between and among deer wintering yards, the coyotes will feast when deer get bogged down in deep snow under the transmission line. I'm sure the area's moose population will suffer similar fates. The native brook trout and other fish that live in the 115 streams, the waterfowl, wading birds, amphibians, and other species that live in the 263 wetlands will be adversely affected when the canopy of the trees is permanently removed. How can anyone justify the devastation of the 145-mile NECEC project and the damage that will cause to the environment when one single tree cut on Moosehead Lake gets you a fine? In addition, CMP of On-Grid Iberdrola has not presented any evidence of a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions. This is not a clean energy project. Hydro-Quebec may send electricity generated by hydropower dams through the NECEC, but they will use coal and or oil to supply Ontario, New York, New Brunswick, Quebec itself, whoever else they send power to, when demand is high, or when hydro dams are out of commission, or when there's a drought in the future. They cannot guarantee that this will reduce carbon emissions, though they are claiming it will. If they don't deliver the electricity they have contracted to send to Massachusetts, they will face stiff fines. Why hasn't Hydro-Quebec sent one representative to any of these meetings to be questioned? Why isn't Hydro-Quebec here tonight and at other public meetings answering those questions of concerned citizens? Business decisions favor the bottom line, not the environment. I'm also concerned that if the power line is allowed, then a precedent will have been set. What will stop developers from building more transmission lines, gas lines, wind turbines, roads, bridges, cabins, condominiums, and who knows what else in this area? The NECEC may well be the beginning of the end of the wilderness feel and character of Maine's precious woods. There are people who live and work in the footprint of the proposed transmission line. The traditional jobs that are performed here are tourism-based now because of what this area has to offer: fishing, hunting, bird watching, moose watching, hiking, camping, rafting, canoeing, kayaking, snowmobiling, skiing. Just getting away from the hustle and bustle of the city life. And yes, logging still. But Maine laws control the actions of loggers, and the land that cuts grows back. It's not permanent like the NECEC will be. When this area looks like suburban Portland, who will want to visit and spend their money here? Will there be an economic impact study? Do you know that? I don't know. Will there be a full environmental impact study? Has there been one? Before permits are issued, I think those studies should be required. Interestingly, the Central Maine Power, Avangrid Iberdrola, and Western Mountains and Rivers joint statement reads, CMP, Avangrid Iberdrola, proactively sought mitigation ideas that would help Western Maine achieve its potential as a hub for outdoor recreation. The people who participated in these mitigation talks were handpicked by CMP Avangrid Iberdrola and did not represent the rafting community as a whole, or as a whole, the populations of the Forks, West Forks, and Caratunk. There was a perception of shady backroom deals going on with those who were exclusively chosen by CMP Avangrid Iberdrola, which includes purchasing of leased land that otherwise would be off the table if NECEC does not go through. The very few people who have made their living from the Kennebec River did not alert the residents and users of the river that it was under threat by the NECEC. News of this project and its crossing of the Kennebec Gorge only began circulating in the rafting community in early fall of 2017, which is less than 1 year ago. Those preferred hand-picked people were approached in July of 2016, that is what I've heard, by CMP Avangrid Iberdrola, or dry up here. And they chose to mitigate deals for themselves rather than fight it as a community. Because of all the secrecy around the NECEC, the general public lost over a year of time that they could have used to gather opposition. Cliff Stevens, my employer for the last 18 rafting seasons and owner of Moxie Outdoor Adventures and Lake Moxie Camps, is in Farmington at the meeting they are speaking tonight. Tony, bring me my water, please.
Yes, sir.
So he's Ow, boy. So he's there in Farmington speaking. Cliff Stevens was neither notified about the NECEC by CMP Avangrid Iberdrola or the people who were selected to represent this area. He heard the news when the rest of us did. It's ironic because Lake Moxie Camps abuts the existing power lines, which will be widened there if the NECEC is approved. In addition, Moxie Outdoors Adventures River Lunch Site is at the spot where the high tension power lines will cross the river. Why wasn't Mr. Stevens notified of this by anyone? Didn't anyone think it was worth mentioning to him that since both of his businesses are heavily impacted of this project? Is it because they were afraid he wouldn't agree and then tip off the rest of the community? Is it because he had no leased land that he could be used as a bargaining chip by CMP Avangrid Iberdrola? The opinion of many, based on tactics like this, is that the NECEC project was purposely kept on the down low to minimize the time that opponents would have to organize against it. And driving it all is the reported $60 million per year for the next 20 years that CMP Avangrid Iberdrola is poised to earn from it. The NECEC is a for-profit venture at the expense of Maine's wilderness and the people that CMP Avangrid Iberdrola is supposed to serve. Finally, almost done. CMP Avangrid Iberdrola has not demonstrated a public need in Maine for this project. Maine consistently generates more electricity than it consumes. Log into the USGS Water Information System web interface and view the water flows from this summer, 2018, one of the hottest on record. Even on the hottest days when power was at its highest demand in New England, except for one afternoon in August, on the 16th, 2018, Harris Station Dam did not generate electricity at its maximum capacity to send into the New England power grid. If electricity was truly needed on these hottest days, there was a potential to generate it right here in Maine. Has CMP Avangrid Iberdrola and Massachusetts considered whether other projects within Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Massachusetts itself can address demand for clean, renewable energy with a smaller environmental footprint than that of the NECEC? There are solar projects awaiting utilization, and for example, there's a dairy farmer that Kimberly Lyman told me about, who has a solar possibility for a soon-to-be defunct dairy farm. He has acres and acres of open land. Those fields are available. No existing forest will need to be permanently cut. It's already pasture land. If the NECEC goes through, will his solar project ever be a possibility? Can projects like this dairy farmers manage to work long-term in order to supply the New England power grid, like i.e. Massachusetts with renewable power? The promised 1,700 jobs touted in construction and maintenance of the transmission line are mostly temporary. And when the NECEC is built, those jobs will disappear. Other local renewable energy projects, such as the dairy farm mentioned, won't be built, and real permanent jobs for Mainers won't be created. In fact, those jobs could be eliminated altogether because the NECEC will obstruct transmission lines for those projects and glut the power market with electricity. To me, it makes more sense to invest in clean, renewable energy projects based in Maine rather than import Canadian energy that will block out those Maine projects. I'd like to conclude my comments with a quote by President Theodore Roosevelt, who believed that our treasured United States wilderness needed to be protected. He addressed a group from the porch of the Cameron Hotel at Grand Canyon on May 6, 1903, and said, "Leave it as it is. You cannot improve on it. The ages have been at work on it, and man can only mar it. What you can do is keep it for your children, your children's children, and for all who come after you, as one of the great sights which every American, if he can travel at all, should see it." Is it really so audacious that the people who live and work in this region want to protect this beautiful area's rivers, streams, wildlife, and the way we make our living? Who gets to decide that CMP Avangrid Iberdrola's profits are more important than these values? Do not allow the needless, non-essential NECEC project to come to fruition, please. Maine's wilderness, wildlife, and waterways must be preserved, and the people who live in and make their living in and from the Maine woods deserve to have a wilderness free of development to continue making that living. Thank you.